Hey guys, congratulations on completing CS50's Lecture 0. This is the first step that you'll presumably take into your journey of programming. So, let's just jump right into the screen here. And the first problem set of this course is we need to make a program on a programming language called Scratch, alright? And this is the program right here. So unlike most coding languages, it's not based on text, but rather on puzzle pieces, as we can see here. So it's more of a graphic programming language, and it's the perfect introduction for us to understand the logic of programming. Alright, so we can see here that we have a cat, and any object on Scratch is called a sprite. So this cat right here is a sprite. So in order to do this problem set, they give us certain criteria that we have to fulfill. This is from CS50 themselves. But let's ignore this for a minute, and let's focus on Scratch. Alright, so we're supposed to make any sort of game or interactive story or anything that involves some sort of interaction. So I've decided that I want to make a game. You can make anything at all. I want to make a game, alright? But I don't want the game to have a cat. I want to make some sort of paddleball game. You know, the ones that we used to play when we were kids? Yeah, so first of all, I don't want this cat, so let me delete this sprite right here. Alright, so it's a blank screen, and so I want to add a sprite. And for that, I come to the bottom right corner here, and it pops up here. So choose a sprite. So the first thing I want is a ball. Okay, perfect. There's a ball right here. Okay, so there's a ball. And I also want a paddle, right? I want to make a paddle ball game. So choose a sprite again, bottom right corner. And paddle. All right, let me just search for a paddle. Paddle. Okay, perfect. So we have a ball and a paddle, the two sprites required to make this project. But first of all, what's the first thing I want? I want the ball to move. How do I go about doing that? So if you look at the left side menu here, there's a tab called Motion. And the first puzzle piece here is something called Move 10 Steps. Okay, that sounds about right. I want the ball to move, so let me just try that. And to run any program on Scratch, we click the green flag, right? So let's hit the green flag. And nothing appears to be happening. And that's because I didn't tell the program to do this when the green flag is clicked. So let me jump on over here to events and drag this over here. When green flag clicked, move 10 steps. And by the way, when you start off with Scratch, you won't necessarily know that when green flag clicked is under events. But eventually, as you mess around with the program a bit, you're gonna get the hang of it. So I already knew there was in events, but you might have had to look around here, maybe scroll a bit and find when green flag clicked. And now we know it's in events, all right? So let's run it now. Click the green flag. And the ball does move, but I have to keep on clicking the green flag for it to move. And I don't want this to happen. I want it to just keep moving automatically by itself. And for this, if you remember from the lecture, we can use something called a loop, which basically means do something again and again. And in this case, I want the ball to move forever. I want the ball to keep on moving. All right. So for that, we can use a forever loop, which again is in events. So I want to use a forever loop, and let me just drag it here. It'll automatically combine over there. All right. So now the move 10 steps is within the forever loop. Okay. Now let's try to hit the green flag. Oh, so the ball did move quite a bit, and it's still moving. But when it hits the edge of the screen, it just stops. And we don't want that to happen. What we want is, we want the ball to bounce when it hits an edge, right? So let's look again. We scroll, try to find something that makes sense. And here we see a puzzle piece called If on Edge, Bounce. And that sounds about right. So let's drag it here under the move 10 steps, still within this forever loop. And let's play the program. And now we can see that it actually bounces. But again, I want the ball to sort of interact with the paddle and move around here and there. So this is not the best way to do it. As we can see, it's just rolling from side to side. So let me stop the program there. And how might we go about sort of pointing the ball in a certain direction? So we can see here that there's a puzzle piece called Point in Direction. So let me just put it in my forever loop and point in direction, and this is 90 degrees, presumably, yes. So the ball is currently running on 90 degrees. You can see it's going from side to side. So rather than 90, why don't we make it 45? And let's see what happens now. Oh, what is happening? So the ball is moving, but when it's on the edge, it's not bouncing, and it keeps on trying to go to that one side. So we must have made some error in our code, and don't worry, this is completely normal. Everyone makes errors. Alright, so how can we fix the error now is the problem. So let's stop the program. And we can see here that we put the point in direction puzzle piece in the forever loop. So it's going to forever point in that direction. But that's not what we want. We want it to just point in that direction once when the green flag is clicked. So we take out this point in direction from our forever loop, and we instead put it above it here in the when green flag clicked. So let's see what happens now. Okay, perfect. So we can see that there are some puzzle pieces that we don't want to put in the forever loop because there are some things that we don't want to do forever. But again, as we can look at the game here, it's not much of a game. The ball is moving right through the paddle, right? We don't want the ball to move through the paddle. We want it to interact with the paddle. So it sounds like we need to do some more programming, all right? So it sounds like when the ball touches the paddle, we want it to move back, right? We want it to hit back. We want the paddle to hit the ball, sort of. So how do we go about doing that? Well, if you think about it, we need a condition, right? We can say something like, if the ball hits the paddle, then it should move, rather than simply go through it. So what might we be using here? We need to use an if function, right? So where can we find an if function? Well, again, we won't know this, but if you mess around with Scratch enough, you'll know that it's under controls. You're not expected to know this beforehand, though. I just do. So this sounds like the correct puzzle piece. If something happens, then something should happen. All right, let's put it in our forever loop. If what? If the ball is touching the paddle, right? So this is our condition. If something happens, then something. So if the ball is touching the paddle, it sounds like we might need to use the sensing tab here, because if it's touching something, all right? Again, this is sort of something you think about, you mess around with Scratch, and it'll come naturally to you. So we can see here under sensing, there is a puzzle piece called touching, but we don't want it to be touching mouse pointer. So we click on the arrow. Oh, and there's paddle. So touching paddle. Okay. So if the ball is touching the paddle, then what we wanted to do, we want the ball to turn around and then move the steps again. So we wanted to turn around. It sounds like something we could use in motion. And then we wanted to, what can we use here? We wanted to perhaps turn, right? We wanted to turn, let's say 180 degrees and hit right back. So let's try that. Green flag clicked. Oh, okay. Seems like it worked. But again, this is not a very fun game because there's no way you can move the paddle, right? So how about now, we can switch the code. We can switch the sprite that we're writing code for. So here we can see that the ball is selected. So this is the code for our ball. This is a script for the ball. And now we click on the paddle here. And okay. So it's blank again because we have not written any scripts for the paddle. So for the paddle, what do we want? We want to be able to move it somehow. So it sounds like we're going to need the motion. So how do we go about moving this? Let's look around here. How about set X to something? All right, let's drag it here first. Set X to -30. By the way, set X is just referring to set the position of the sprite on the X-axis. If you remember from math class, X is the horizontal axis and Y is the vertical axis. So set X to something. But I don't want to set it to -30. I want to set it to wherever my mouse is. So again, it sounds like we need to sense where the mouse is. So perfect. We see here that there's a puzzle piece called mouse X. So set to mouse X. And let's not make the same mistake as before, like we did in ball. Here we need to put when green flag clicked. And if you remember, that's in events. So when green flag clicked, set X to mouse X. So let's see what happens here. Why is it not moving? Let's try this again. And again, it doesn't appear to move. And that's because it's only following this instruction once. It's only setting its location on the x-axis one time, rather than doing it forever. It's only when the green flag is clicked that it's following where the mouse is. So again, we need to use a forever loop here under the control section. So let's put that inside there. Okay. So now let's try it out. Oh wow, so now it does work. Okay, that's pretty cool so far, but this is not a very fun game because first of all, if the ball misses the paddle, nothing happens. So that's not very fun. There should be some sort of way to die or something like that. So how do we go about doing that? Well, we don't want it to hit the bottom side, right? So if it hits somewhere below the paddle, we want to say game over or something. We want the game to stop, basically. So for that, we can use another sprite. And if you remember, just click here, bottom right, choose a sprite. And let's say we just want a line. Let's see if there's a line here. Put it below the paddle here. So now, what code can we write for the line? Basically, just thinking out loud here, we want the game to stop basically when the ball hits the red line, right? So currently nothing happens when the ball hits the red line because we haven't programmed anything for the red line. So if we miss the ball and the ball hits the red line, we need the game to stop. We need to be game over, you know. So first of all, for the line here, again, let's not mess about. First things first, when green flag clicked. When green flag clicked, what do we want to do? Again, let's not make the same mistake as before. We want, whenever the ball hits the red line, we want the game to stop. So it sounds like we need to forever be checking, is the ball hitting the red line? No. Is the ball hitting the red line? Is the ball hitting we want to keep on asking the computer that. So for line, it seems that we need another forever loop. So forever, if the ball is hitting the red line, we want the game to stop. So it sounds like the if condition here sounds about right. So forever, if the ball is touching the red line, sounds like something we can use with sensing. So if touching, again, we can come to the drop down here. And if touching the ball, right? We're writing code for the red line. So if the red line is touching the ball, then we want the game to stop. Stop sounds like something that could come under events, if I'm not mistaken. And turns out it's not. It's actually under control, right? So it's just a game of trial and error here to find the pieces. But the logic, the conditions stay the same. So under control here, there's a stop. So if the red line is touching the ball, then stop all. All right. So now let's run the program again. Let's see if it works. Okay, let me miss. And it does stop. Okay, that's a good sign. Let's try to restart the game by clicking the green flag again. And again, we can see that there's some sort of error here. We click the green flag and the ball moves 10 steps. But when the ball moves 10 steps, it's still hitting the red line. So we want it to move again and again until it's no more hitting the red line. So we need to click the green flag multiple times here, and that doesn't seem very fun. So instead, what we can do is, we go back to our ball here. How about when green flag clicked, the ball moves to a random position? Doesn't that sound nice? So rather than starting over here on the red line, it'll start from any random position. So go to any random position, again, sounds like something in motion. And right here, we have a puzzle piece called go to random position, and this is perfect. So again, try to think over it. Should this be in the forever loop, or should it be outside the forever loop? My logic tells me that it should be outside the forever loop, because I don't want the ball to go to a random position forever, but only at the start of the game when the green flag is clicked. So let's test it out now. Let us die. Click the green flag. And okay, we saw it started from a random position. Let's try it again. Hit the green flag. Okay, so there's also a bug here, because when we do a random position, the random position can also be where the red line is, but that's just, that's an edge case. So let's try again. Start from random, 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 random. All right, so it seems to be going pretty well. But again, this is first of all a pretty boring game, I'd say. Let's try to spice it up a bit. So first of all, I think making a backdrop would be nice. So over here in the bottom right corner, we don't want to add another sprite. We want to add a backdrop here. Choose a backdrop, bottom right corner. And I want to make it something, let's say, it seems nice here. Why don't we make it something related to space? Space, let me search for one here. And this background looks pretty nice. Okay, so the game already starting to look a little more fun. But again, how we could make this game a bit more fun is by keeping track of our score, right? Because right now the ball is just bouncing off the paddle, it's going here and there, and with the red line, it hits the red line, it stops. But let's try to make a score to keep track of your progress in the game. That sounds pretty fun. And when we want to store a value, we store it in a variable, okay? So let's, in the menu here, we click variables. And let's make a variable. So let's make a variable, let's call it score for all sprites. Okay. So instantly here, we can see on the top left corner, there's something called score. So let's try to play the game. Okay, the ball hits the paddle, but the score isn't updating. And that's because we haven't actually done any programming with the score. We just put it there. So now when do we want the score to increase? Well, we want it to increase every time the ball hits the paddle, right? So if the ball is touching the paddle, increase score by 1. That's sort of the way you say it to the computer, right? So over here we can see change variable by 1. Okay. So we want to change, we get the drop down menu here, change score by 1 if the ball is touching the paddle, right? So turn 180 degrees and change score by 1. And also another thing we should do is in the beginning of the game, we need to set our score to 0. So here we can change set score to 0. And again, we'll put it here. And oh wait, so over here you might be thinking, why do I need to set the score to 0 at the beginning? Isn't it already 0? So okay, let's listen to the counter argument. Let's not put the score. But here we have change score by 1 if the ball is touching the paddle. Okay, let's do this. Let's try it out. Okay, and the score is updating. So 1, 2, every time the ball hits the paddle, the score is being updated. So this is a pretty fun game. But let's see what happens when I die here. And oh, I want to start a new game. I hit the green flag, but we see that the score started from 5 instead of from 0, right? So that's why in the beginning, we need to set the score to 0. So again, we do events. When green flag clicked, move to variables here, set score to 0. So that's why we need to do it. We've shown the demonstration. All right, so again, the game seems to be working perfectly. Let's try to die on purpose here. Hit the green flag again. And the score resets to 0. All right, so the game seems to be working very well. But again, it's just missing a little bit of that oomph, you know? So let's try to add maybe a sound every time the ball hits the paddle. That sounds like it could be fun. So in the menu, luckily here we have sound. So okay, play sound pop until done. That sounds pretty fun. So where might we drag it here? Here in the ball script, we can see that when green flag clicked, if the ball is touching the paddle, then play sound pop. That sounds like it makes sense, you know? So green flag clicked. Let's try it. Oh, you can hear that sound, pop. Okay, so that's pretty fun. The game is already looking very nice. And when it dies, what happens? Okay, so again, a sound effect when it dies might be fun as well. Again, this is not needed. It's just to make the game a little more fun, a little more interactive. So we come over here to click the line, and we write a script for the line. Let's say if the line is touching the ball, then let's play sound. We can record a sound here. So you can actually record any sound you want with your computer's microphone, but I'm not going to do that right now. So let's just say play sound pop. All right. Ideally, it'll be a different sound, but let's just try it out here. Pop. All right, that's pretty fun. Let's see what happens when we die. Okay, and so this is our game. We can see that it's very simple. All you have to do is work on the logic step by step. And that's it. So now, let's check our game that we made against CS50's criteria, right? And this is found on CS50's website. I can leave the link in the description below. So first criteria is your project must have at least 2 sprites, at least one of which must resemble something other than a cat. So we go to our program here. Okay, ball, paddle, line. It seems that we have 3 sprites and none of them are cats. So okay, we fulfill this criteria. Your project must have at least 3 scripts total. Okay. So remember, scripts are like whenever green flag clicked, that's one script. So here we have a script, 1, 2, paddle has its own script here, 3, and line has its own script. So we have 4 scripts. So, okay, it fulfills this condition. Your project must use at least one condition. And remember what a condition is. It's like if something happens, then something. So we can see here that we use a condition on the ball. If touching paddle, then. So that's a condition. So paddle, we don't have a condition. And line, we do have a condition. So if touching ball, then stop. So we use 2 conditions here. And the criteria is that we have at least 1. So, okay, we fulfilled that criteria. It must use at least 1 loop. So again here, the forever, that's a loop. Do something forever. And again, we have a forever loop here. And we have another forever loop here. So we have 3 loops. And we need at least 1. Okay, so we fulfill that condition. It's use at least 1 variable. And again, score here is a variable. That's where we store our score. And finally, it needs to use at least 1 sound. And we do have a sound here. Play sound pop until done. So it fulfills the criteria. Your project should be more complex than most of those demonstrated in the lecture. So this isn't quite that complex. It's a very simple game. So maybe we could do something to make it a little more fun, a little more interesting, and a little more complex. So here are some things to consider. How might you increase difficulty? Let's say a program where the ball starts off slow and gets faster the higher your score is. So let's say in the beginning, the ball moves slowly, slowly, slowly. And let's say when you reach a score of 5, we want the game to get a bit more difficult. So the ball becomes faster, the ball speed becomes faster. How might we do that? Well, I'm not going to tell you the answer because that's for you to figure out. But we know we can change the ball speed by changing the number of steps the ball moves. So let's say here, instead of 10 steps, I move it 20 steps. You can see the ball is a lot faster, okay? But we don't want it just like that. We want it to be only if, like let's say, just like a game logic, as the game progresses, the difficulty should increase as well. So how do we make it in such a way where if the score reaches a certain amount, then only should the speed become faster? Maybe we could use something like if score is above 10, then move 20 steps forever. I don't know, something like that. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. This is something you should figure out. And again, how would you add lives to the game, where the game only stops after you miss 3 times rather than 1? So currently here, if the ball hits the red line once, you immediately die. The game stops. But what if I wanted to have lives, let's say 3 lives? So the game would only stop when the ball hits the red line 3 times. How would we go about doing that? Could we perhaps make another variable called lives? So when green flag clicked, set lives to 3, and every time the ball hits the red line, decrease lives by 1? Maybe something like that. That's something for you to figure out again. And what if I wanted to move the paddle with my keyboard rather than a mouse? So again, how might we go about doing that? These are some things that I'm going to leave open to you guys. Leave it in the comments below if you have an idea on how to do it. Walk it through logically. Try to think about each of these scenarios. And again, you don't have to do this. This is just a game that I made like from scratch. You can make your own game, obviously. Make it a little more complex than this. This is a rather simple game. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And as usual, bye David!